Have you ever felt like you were trapped in a maze, unable to understand why certain situations in your life keep repeating? Maybe you're chasing a goal that always seems just out of reach, or you feel an unexplainable emptiness, as if a crucial piece of the puzzle is missing, the one that could finally make everything fall into place. What you're about to hear might be that missing piece. Carl Jung believed that nothing in life happens by chance. Once you understand that, you'll begin to find answers. Unconscious and invisible. Network of symbols and archetypal patterns that link our individual existence to something greater. Take a moment to think, how often have you ignored the signs? How often have you felt misunderstood without knowing why? Maybe you've tried to fill that inner void with success, relationships, or distractions, but none of it truly helped. That sense of unease could come from a simple but profound reason: you're not living in alignment with your true nature, and the key to reconnecting with that nature lies in the moment you were born. For thousands of years, cultures around the world have believed that the moment of birth reveals essential aspects of our life path, not because everything is set in stone, but because we're part of a greater design. Just like the seasons each carry their own rhythm and meaning, winter invites reflection, spring brings renewal, summer allows growth, and autumn brings introspection. Your birth carries a unique energy. It shapes your personality, your choices, your passions, and even your fears. The problem is, if you don't understand how this energy works, you might unknowingly work against it instead of using it. Jung discovered that many inner conflicts come from being disconnected from what he called universal archetypes. These deeply rooted patterns shape the way we see the world and how we behave. He believed that the month you're born reflects which of these archetypal forces are most present in you, and therefore what strengths and challenges you might face. Think of it like a compass. If you don't know how to read it, you'll wander in circles, but if you learn how to interpret the signs, your path becomes clear. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to lead effortlessly, while others shine through creativity or empathy? It's no coincidence. Every person is born with a specific energy. Some people are natural pioneers, trailblazers, who take on challenges and inspire others. Others are deeply attuned to emotions, sensing what others feel. They are healers by nature, offering comfort and understanding. And then there are those who question life itself, searching for deeper meaning in connecting with the spiritual side of existence. But what happens when you ignore your own nature? When you try to become someone you're not, life starts to feel like an uphill battle, like swimming against the current. It's like planting a sunflower in the wrong soil. No matter how hard you try, it just won't grow. Maybe that's how you're feeling right now. Maybe you're trying to fit into a role that was never meant for you, while your true potential is still waiting to be discovered. Jung believed that real transformation begins the moment we turn our gaze inward and confront what we've long avoided. To him, self-awareness was like switching on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, what was hidden becomes visible, and what once felt threatening begins to make sense. That's exactly what you should do now. Take an honest look at yourself and ask, what is my birth month trying to tell me about who I am? Imagine just for a moment that your birth was no accident, but part of a larger design, that every challenge you face holds meaning, and your strengths are not random. The secret lies in learning to read the signs and using them to shape the life you truly want, because everything you need is already within you. You just haven't learned how to access it yet. For centuries, great thinkers like Jung recognized that the universe speaks to us in symbols and patterns. In the past, people looked to the stars for answers, but today we can find those answers within ourselves. Have you ever noticed that certain seasons affect you more deeply than others? That some months make you feel alive and full of energy, while others seem to slow you down? That's no coincidence. It's the energy of your birth moment subtly shaping your journey. But that doesn't mean your fate is set in stone. Quite the opposite. Jung taught that by becoming aware of these patterns, we can break free from repeating cycles and take charge of our lives. It's not about predicting the future. It's about understanding yourself better and using that insight to make conscious decisions. Before we go any further, ask yourself one important question. What are you looking for? You may not know the answer yet, but I promise you, by the end of this journey, you'll see yourself in a new light. You'll realize that everything you've experienced, the joy and the pain, the wins and the setbacks, has been part of a greater pattern. And when you understand that pattern, even your darkest moments will reveal their lessons. So if you've ever felt like something inside you is waiting to be discovered, stay with this. What you're about to learn might be the key to unlocking your hidden potential, because as Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Now is the time to take the wheel. Now that you've seen the connection, be ready. In the next part, we'll go even deeper, exploring how the specific energy of your birth month influences your emotions, your decisions, and even the opportunities that come your way. This journey has only just begun. Have you ever felt like you were trapped in an invisible loop? Like no matter how much you grow, you somehow end up back at the same place. Maybe it was a relationship that just didn't work out, a job that seemed perfect but left you disappointed, or a constant feeling of not belonging, as if the world is moving in one direction and you're quietly drifting in the other. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Millions of people are stuck in this very loop without ever understanding why. But Carl Jung left us a powerful clue. What you call fate might actually be part of a cosmic dance, and you're not just the dancer, you're also the choreographer. Jung believed that the patterns shaping our lives aren't random or meaningless. They're part of a deeper connection between individual and the universe. He compared human life to a river, flowing through rocks, bends, and obstacles, always finding a way forward. But the course of that river isn't random. It's shaped by forces both within and around us that are often invisible but leave traces along the way. One of those traces is the moment you were born. And it's not just about planets or moon phases, it's something deeper. It's the archetypal energy that peaked the moment you took your first breath. Imagine for a moment a woman named Anna. She's 48 years old, a literature teacher. And on the surface, her life seems peaceful. She has a stable job, a modest home, 2 grown children, and a caring husband. But inside, Anna carries a weight that few people can see. Since her early 20s, she has felt like she's constantly racing against time, chasing an ideal that always seems just out of reach. Every time things begin to go well, something happens that throws her off course. A difficult boss, an unexpected financial setback, or worse, that old familiar feeling of not being good enough, causing her to doubt even her own accomplishments. Why does everything feel so hard? She wonders. Am I meant to live like this forever? What Anna doesn't know is that part of this lifelong struggle is closely tied to the energy of the month she was born. April. Anna was born in a month of fire, carrying the archetypal energy of pioneers and conquerors, those driven to act, to build, to lead. But as Jung reminded us, every energy has its shadow. In Anna's case, that shadow reveals itself as impatience and harsh self-criticism. She constantly feels the need to be in motion, to always do more, and yet it never feels like enough. This pattern is deeply embedded in her subconscious and shapes how she makes decisions in response to challenges. And here's the crucial insight: Anna is not doomed to repeat this cycle forever. What Jung teaches us is that we have the power to transform these patterns. By bringing them into conscious awareness, Anna can learn to balance her drive for action with moments of stillness and reflection. She might come to understand that she doesn't have to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders, and that true strength sometimes lies in knowing when to pause. This is the cosmic dance spoke of, the balance between the opposing forces that live within us. Now think of Roberto, a 57-year-old man who has worked his whole life in mechanical engineering. He's the classic provider, someone who has always put others' needs before his own. From a young age, he believed that success was measured by financial stability and professional respect, and for many years that belief served him well. He built a solid career, raised his children, and ensured his family's future. But now, as retirement approaches, he feels empty. The achievements that once brought him pride now seem hollow. He's beginning to question the meaning behind everything he has done. Roberto was born in May, a month associated with the search for stability, security, and the bridge between the material and the spiritual. For most of his life, he lived in alignment with the positive energy of that month, creating a strong foundation for himself and those he loves. But as with all energies, this one has its shadows. For Roberto, the shadow expresses itself as an excessive need for control and a deep fear of the unknown. Now, faced with the existential void that retirement brings, he realizes that he spent so much time building a secure life that he forgot to ask himself, what makes me truly happy? Jung said that the unconscious always finds a way to express itself, whether through dreams, emotions, or life events that seem to be out of our control. In Roberto's case, the emptiness he now feels isn't a failure, it's an invitation to explore a part of himself he's long ignored. He must learn to let go of control, to accept that not everything can be planned, and most importantly, to trust that unexpected change can bring beauty. Can you see the connection between these stories in your own life? Maybe you too have been walking a path that once felt right, but no longer reflects who you truly are. Maybe you've ignored the signals from your body, your mind, or your heart until they became impossible to overlook. But here's the good news: it's never too late to rewrite your story. The cosmic dance Carl Jung described is not a prison, it's an opportunity for self-discovery. When you understand the energies at play in your life, you can begin to use them in your favor. If, for example, you were born in January, you might realize that your instinct to lead doesn't mean you have to do everything alone. If you were born in July, you may come to see that your deep empathy doesn't have to drain you. It can be a powerful strength as long as it's directed with care. Jung often said that self-awareness doesn't free us from life's challenges, but it gives us the tools to face them with wisdom. When you begin to recognize the patterns in your life, something powerful happens. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start to see yourself as the author of your own story. What once seemed impossible to change suddenly begins to make sense, and you realize you have the power to choose differently. Think back to a moment in your life when everything seemed to fall apart. Maybe it was a divorce, the loss of a job, or a health crisis. In that moment, you probably asked yourself, why is this happening to me but now? I invite you to look at those moments from a new perspective. What if they weren't punishments, but invitations to explore parts of yourself you've neglected and to grow in ways you never thought possible? The cosmic dance of life isn't about avoiding hardship. It's about finding balance between facing challenges and learning from them. And that balance begins when you understand the energy that's been with you since the moment you were born. It doesn't matter if you're in your 30s, 50s, or 65. Self-awareness has no expiration date. The deeper you're willing to go into your inner world, the closer you come to living a life aligned with your true purpose. Are you ready to look within and discover what energies are guiding your journey? Because from the moment you make that choice, the cosmic dance stops being a mysterious force and becomes your greatest ally. And in the next part, we'll explore how to identify these specific energies and use them to transform your reality. After all, as Jung said, the unconscious is always speaking to those who are willing to listen. Have you ever thought about how much the environment you were born into shapes who you become? Not just the physical place, but the time itself, the season, the weather, the silence or noise of that particular moment. All of it became part of the invisible story you carry within you. At the moment of your birth, the world around you is in motion, and every detail from the sunlight to the breeze or the rain tapping against window helped shape your first impression of existence. That moment was far more than a biological event. It was a quiet invitation to a unique and deeply symbolic journey. Carl Jung believed that the collective unconscious wasn't something mystical, but a psychological reality, one that connects all people through universal symbols known as archetypes. And your birth was the beginning of that connection. The moment you took your first breath, it was as if an invisible thread was woven between you and the universe, linking the outer world to your inner emotions. What most people don't realize is that if we don't understand this connection, we can spend our whole lives ignoring the signs that are quietly guiding us toward a more fulfilling path. So pause for a moment and reflect. Are you living the life you truly want to live? Or are you stuck in a version of life shaped by expectations that aren't your own? That sense of disconnection could very well be rooted in your unawareness of the patterns silently shaping your journey. Jung once said that when we ignore messages from the unconscious, it finds other ways to speak through dreams, illness, or recurring life situations. So if you find yourself facing the same challenges again and again, or feel like you're always battling something invisible, maybe it's time to listen to what your birth itself is trying to tell you. Think of Pedro, a man who believed for years that he was on the right path. He built a successful career as an executive in a large company, earned a good salary, and was respected by his peers. But just as he was about to be promoted to director, something unexpected happened. He had a panic attack. Everything he thought he had under control started to unravel in a matter of days. Suddenly, the work he once loved felt unbearable. Without understanding why, Pedro found himself on the verge of walking away from it. Also, what caused this sudden collapse? Pedro was born in September, a month deeply connected to the archetype of perfectionism and the search for order. From childhood, he was taught to be responsible, to fulfill his duties, and to strive for excellence in everything he did. And for a long time that energy worked in his favor. But the shadow side of this archetype, something he had ignored his entire life, eventually took its toll. Pedro was so self-critical that he never allowed himself to celebrate even his biggest achievements. He always found something he could have done better. That constant pressure built up over time until it had to be released. Now think about your own life. How often have you suppressed your emotions because it didn't feel like the right time to deal with them? How often have you pushed forward even when something inside you was saying something's not right, just because the world expected you to stay strong? That mindset may seem necessary, but Jung warned us what we repress doesn't disappear, it simply hides, waiting for the right moment to resurface. And more often than not, that moment comes during a crisis, but it doesn't have to be that way. Self-awareness can turn a crisis into a turning point. In Pedro's case, when he finally sought help, he realized he didn't need to give up his career. He just needed to change the way he approached it. He learned to be more compassionate with himself and to recognize his accomplishments without demanding perfection, by understanding that the archetype of perfectionism has two sides, one of excellence and one of paralyzing self-judgment. He was able to bring his energy back into balance, and the result, Pedro not only recovered, he became a more empathetic and effective leader, because now he understood what it meant to recognize limits, both his own and those of others, which brings us to an essential question: which archetype is quietly guiding your life? Don't underestimate the power of knowing some people are born with the energy to lead and blaze new trails, like those born in January or April, others, like those born in July, are deeply sensitive to the emotions of others, a gift that, if not managed well, can lead to emotional burnout. And those born in December often carry an expansive, optimistic energy that inspires others, but they can lose their way if they rely too much on external validation. Now think about your own birth month. How has it influenced your decision so far? Are you living out the bright side or the shadow side of your archetype? Share your thoughts. Maybe you, like Pedro, have sensed patterns in your life that haven't yet been explored, but don't be afraid. Recognizing those patterns is the first step toward transforming them. Jung believed that self-awareness is like exploring a dark house with a flashlight. You have to be willing to shine a light into the corners you usually avoid, and one of those corners might be the belief system you inherited from the environment you were born into. If you grew up hearing that success only counts when it comes through struggle and sacrifice, you may have internalized that as absolute truth. But ask yourself, is that really what you want for your life? This is where reflection matters. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what beliefs am I holding that I've never questioned? Maybe you've always thought you have to be strong all the time. Maybe you believe you don't deserve rest until every goal is met. These beliefs often have roots in the archetypal energy of your birth month, but that doesn't mean you're bound to them forever. The true power of self-awareness lies in recognizing those influences and choosing what to do with them. Imagine this scenario. A 52-year-old woman named Helena spent her entire life believing that true love requires sacrifice in every relationship. She prioritized her partner's needs over her own. This led to a recurring pattern of unbalanced relationships, where she ultimately felt empty and unfulfilled. Helena was born in February, a month connected to the archetype of empathy and emotional healing. The bright side of this energy made her a wonderful listener and a source of comfort to those around her. But the shadow side, neglecting her own needs, quietly eroded her self-worth. It wasn't until Helena recognized this pattern that her life began to change. She learned that true empathy must begin with the self. She realized that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's an act of self-love. And most importantly, by caring for herself, she became even better at supporting others, this time in a healthy way. Helena's story is a powerful reminder. The archetypes we carry are not chains, they are opportunities. If you feel stuck in a cycle that keeps repeating, ask yourself, what is this experience trying to teach me? Jung believe that healing begins when we stop seeing our challenges as enemies and start seeing them as teachers. Before we move into the next part of this video, I invite you to reflect in the comments what patterns have you noticed in your life that might be linked to the month you were born. Don't underestimate the power of this self-inquiry. By sharing your experience, you may discover that others are walking a similar path, and together, you can find new ways to grow. Remember, every archetype has a purpose. If you learn to consciously work with it, it becomes your ally, not your burden. In the next part, we'll explore how these archetypes can be used to bring about real transformation in your life, and how to turn your shadows into sources of strength. As Jung said, where your fear is, there lies your power. Now imagine sitting on a train traveling in what seems like a straight line, only to realize there are hidden detours along the way. You think you're in control, but with each new season, you find yourself arriving at destinations you never planned. Does that sound familiar? The feeling of living in a routine, yet somehow being pulled by something greater along a path you never consciously chose. If you've ever wondered why certain cycles keep repeating in your life, in relationships, at work, or even in your emotional world, you're about to understand something fundamental. None of it is random. Jung said, the unconscious doesn't just influence our decisions, it creates patterns, and if we ignore them, they will bring us back to the same point again and again. But what does it truly mean to recognize and break a pattern? Let me tell you the story of Mariana, a 38-year-old woman with a thriving career in marketing. From the outside, her life looked perfect: a solid income, frequent travel, and an enviable social circle. But there was one area of Mariana's life that felt like a minefield: romantic relationships. Over the years, she had been in several passionate, promising relationships, all of which ended in heartbreak and disillusionment from her partners. She kept hearing the same line, "You're amazing, but something just isn't working." Over time, Mariana began to believe that she was the problem, but during a therapy session. Grounded in Jungian psychology, she made an unexpected discovery. Her therapist asked, "What do all of these relationships have in common?" At first, Mariana listed the flaws of her partner's: lack of commitment, betrayal, emotional distance. But as she looked deeper, she saw something uncomfortable. The one common thread was an unconscious fear of rejection. Since childhood, Mariana had believed that she had to be perfect to be loved. This belief was so deeply rooted that she was unconsciously drawn to partners who would reinforce it, repeating the same cycle of pain. That moment of clarity changed everything. Jung taught that when we bring what is hidden in the unconscious into the light, we gain the power to transform it. For Mariana, it meant rewriting the inner story. She began to notice when she was molding herself to be accepted, and for the first time she set clear boundaries. The result: instead of chasing approval, she began asking, "What do I want in a relationship?" Within months, everything shifted. She met a partner who respected her exactly as she was, with no need for perfection. How often have you felt trapped in patterns that seemed beyond your control? It could be a job that always ends in frustration, a friendship that mysteriously falls apart, or a constant loop of overthinking that leaves you feeling stuck. These cycles are not coincidences, they are signs that something within you is asking for attention. Jung called this the process of individuation. The journey of integrating all parts of the self, light and shadow, to become who we truly are. Consider this striking statistic. According to a Harvard study, 80% of people unconsciously repeat familiar patterns in their romantic and social relationships without even realizing it. That doesn't mean they're doomed to fail. It means they're caught in a kind of emotional autopilot. But the good news is autopilot can be switched off, and once it is, the real journey, the conscious journey, begins. The study revealed something powerful. When people become aware of their patterns, they can transform their lives, not just their relationships, but also their mental well-being and sense of self-worth. Now think with me for a moment. Could the pattern you're living right now be the next one to break? When was the last time you asked yourself whether the choices you're making are truly your own, or just reflections of something inherited from your surroundings, your upbringing, or even past emotional wounds? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. You may discover that others are navigating the very same dilemmas deep down. We're all connected by these invisible stories. When Jung explored universal archetypes, he wasn't doing it just out of academic interest. He believed these ancestral symbols within our psyche could serve as keys to decoding the patterns we live by. One of the most powerful archetypes is that of the hero, the one who faces challenges, overcomes them, and returns transformed. Here's the part many overlook. Before you can become a hero, you must first recognize that there's an obstacle to face. Many of us spend our lives avoiding obstacles, pretending they don't exist, or convincing ourselves that things will eventually work out without ever taking real steps to change. But true transformation begins the moment we stop running and gather the courage to ace what's difficult. Carl Jung believed that what we repress in the unconscious doesn't disappear, it continues to influence us until we consciously confront it. The patterns that shape our lives are not punishments, they are invitations to understand ourselves on a deeper level. When we identify the hidden beliefs driving our decisions, we gain the freedom to take new directions and shape our lives with intention. The key lies in consciously integrating our inner opposites. Instead of suppressing our fears or ignoring our insecurities, we can choose to see them as essential parts of our growth. Every person carries both light and shadow within, and real maturity comes when we learn to accept and balance both sides. That means questioning old patterns, letting go of self-doubt, and opening ourselves to new possibilities. Once we realize that we don't have to be ruled by our unconscious, but can instead make it our ally, the real transformation begins. Now is the moment to make a choice. Will you continue living within old patterns, or are you ready to consciously take the reins of your life? The first step is awareness. The second is intentional action. By questioning your inner beliefs and viewing your choices through a new lens, you open the door to deeper self-realization. And remember, where your greatest fear lies, so does your greatest potential. The cosmic dance of life is waiting for you to find your rhythm and to dance it boldly.